What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another Pitching Ninja's filthiest pitches of the day. Remember, before we get to those pitches, hit that subscribe button. Join the biggest and best daily baseball show on YouTube. And now, without further ado, here are my filthiest pitches of the day. I'm going to start with Paul Battenfield, who had 4 Ks in 4 2/3 innings, had this cutter and fastball. As Pat Benatar said, love is a Battenfield, but I didn't really love the 4 runs he gave up. Battenfield battled Ryan Feltner, who had 6 Ks in 6 innings, gave up no earned runs, and had these changeups. Jake Woodford had 4 Ks in 5 1/3 innings, giving up 2 runs, and had this fastball and breaking ball. And he was up against John Brebbia, who opened the game for the Giants and had 2 Ks in 1 1/3 innings on his fastball and slider. Kyle Bradish was absolutely terrible. He had 1 K in 2 1/3 innings, giving up 7 earned runs. He did have a K on this curveball. But he wasn't fooling anybody yesterday and reminded me kind of Chris Sale's outing the day before. One other thing they had in common, I picked them both in my parlays. He was outdueled by Corey Kluber, who had 3 Ks in 6 innings, thanks to his breaking ball and painted 2-seamer. Luis Garcia had 7 Ks in 6 scoreless innings, thanks to his sliders, changeups, and back foot cutter. And he outdueled Drew Rasmussen, who had 5 Ks in 4 2/3 innings, giving up 5 runs. Rasmussen had a couple of really nice cutters and his mid-90s fastball, and probably his filthiest pitch was this 2-seamer that got the swing out of the zone. And this overlay shows you why you might swing at a 2-seamer that is way off the plate. Because as a hitter, you probably thought it was this cutter that would have broke back to the plate. Joe Ryan had 7 Ks in 7 innings, giving up 1 earned run, and had these fastballs and splitters. And he outdueled Nestor Cortez, who had 6 Ks in 5 innings, but did give up 3 runs. Ryan Nelson had this slider in 3 Ks in 5 innings, giving up 4 runs. And he was outdueled by Brady Singer, who had 5 Ks in 6 innings, giving up only 1 run, thanks to his 2-seamers and sliders. Bailey Falter had 7 Ks in 6 innings, giving up 3 runs, thanks to his changeups and curveball. Marco Gonzalez didn't have a lot of Ks, but did have this changeup. Luke Weaver had 8 Ks in 5 2/3 innings. The downside, he gave up 6 runs, but he did have these changeups and fastballs. He faced off against Martin Perez, who was solid, going 6 1/3 innings, giving up no earned runs, getting 5 Ks. Perez relied heavily on his nasty changeups. Johan Oviedo had 4 Ks in 5 1/3 innings, thanks to his curveballs. And he was opposite Noah Syndergaard, who didn't pitch very well, giving up 7 runs in 4 innings, but did have this wicked 2-seamer that broke 16 inches. Justin Steele was outstanding with 5 Ks in 5 1/3 innings, giving up no runs on only 3 hits. Steele had these sliders and painted fastball, and had this fastball for a sword on a strike him out, throw him out double play. Here's an overlay of Steele's fastball and his 85-mile-an-hour slider, and you can see why that combination would give hitters fits. Steele has only given up 8 earned runs in his last 12 starts, and his ERA this year is 1.19. He battled Blake Snell, who had these curveballs, including this bend-the-knee curveball, as well as his fastballs, and had 5 Ks in 5 innings, but his command was meh. He gave up 5 walks. Mason Miller started terribly, giving up 4 runs in the first inning, but settled down after that, and his stuff was electric. He ended up with 6 Ks. He had this elevated 100-mile-an-hour fastball for a sword. He K'd both Trout and Ohtani on fastballs, and had these absolutely wicked sliders. Just really high-end stuff for Mason Miller. He also impressively gave up a double to Mike Trout that was caught by a dude in a Mike Trout jersey. But even more impressive is Mason Miller's story.
In 2018, Mason Miller was a sophomore at Division III Waynesburg University with a 2-8 record and a 7 ERA. In the same year, at the age of 20, he was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes.
Not an incredibly common diagnosis, especially at my age. It's usually a childhood diagnosis. So not something I expected, and I found myself sitting there, why me?
A change in diet and a better workout regimen saw Mason go from 150 to...
I'm about 210 right now.
But not only did he work on his body building muscle, he worked on his craft. And with those new muscles and improved pitching mechanics, Mason went from throwing in the mid-80s to
96 to 99 pretty consistently.
This past season, in his 1 year at Gardner-Webb as a graduate student, he led the Big South in strikeouts with 121 and had a 3.30 ERA. And now you see why he's a third-round pick.
I wasn't that way till pretty much this past year. And I think it's invigorating to know, I have that chance now, and I have that fire inside me where somebody else's might be burning a little dim. Mine's as strong as it's ever been.
A very easy guy to root for. Miller faced off against Griffin Canning, who had 7 Ks in 5 innings, giving up 3 runs, thanks to his curveballs, changeups, and mixed in some sliders. Josiah Gray went 6 innings and had 9 Ks. Nice. And those 6 innings were scoreless. He only gave up 4 hits and had this mix of curveballs, sliders, and fastballs. He outdueled Jose Butto, who had 1 K in 4 2/3 innings and had 6 walks. Charlie F. in Morton was outstanding yesterday with 9 strikeouts in 7 innings, giving up only 1 run. He has a 2.76 ERA this year. He relied on his 3,000 RPM curveballs, getting a sword and a knee buckle. When Morton's landing his curveball like this, he is really tough to beat. And this overlay with his 95-mile-an-hour fastball shows you why that curveball is so tough. The curveball looks an awful lot like a fastball and then breaks sharply, way out of the plane of that fastball, getting the whiff. I also did this overlay to show you why you might swing at a 2-seamer up and in. It's because the previous pitch was a cutter that ended up finding the zone. So you're looking at the pitch thinking it's a cutter, but it ends up being that 2-seamer. And it just eats you up as a hitter. Mike Clevenger had this slider and fastball. He had 3 Ks in 5 innings, but gave up 6 runs. And he was outdueled by yesterday's filthiest starting pitcher, Jose Berrios, who had 9 Ks in 7 scoreless innings, giving up 4 hits. Berrios touched 97 with his fastball, had these changeups and slurves, and you could tell right away that Berrios was on in this game. And when Berrios is on, his stuff is pretty much as good as anybody's. His pitches have incredible movement, and this overlay of his sinker and slurve show why when he's on, he's so tough to hit. You can see how those pitches switch places on the way to the plate. Now on to my filthiest relievers. Yency Almonte had these sweepers. Evan Phillips had these sweepers. Brent Suter, a.k.a. the Raptor, got this K almost faster than I could describe it. Yep, he got a K in under 20 seconds. Talk about working quickly. The man is a human pitch clock. And I freaking love it. Tyler Rogers had this nasty slider. Jimmy Yacobonis had this 2-seamer that went front door and broke 25 inches. Unfortunately, the camera angle doesn't do it justice. Adbert Alzolay had this fastball and cutter at the knees. Mark Leiter had this dirty splitter. Ron Marinaccio had this nasty changeup. Scott Barlow had this filthy slider and curveball. Jason Foley had this fastball. Mason Thompson had 4 Ks in 2 innings on his fastballs and sliders. Mike Baumann had this knuckle curve and slider. Jorge Lopez had this filthy knuckle curve. Keegan Thompson had this cheese at the knees. Cue the saxophone. Alexis Diaz had these sliders. Matt Brash had this 90-mile-an-hour slider and 98-mile-an-hour fastball. And I did this overlay to show you why you would take a 98-mile-an-hour fastball in the zone. It's because it tunneled really well with that 90-mile-an-hour slider that you just spat on for a ball. Aroldis Chapman had this dirty splitter. Genesis Cabrera had these 6 sliders and fastball, but even more sick were his patented power squat K-struts. Justin Lawrence had these wicked sweepers. Look at them go. Absolute frisbees. Nate Pearson had this heat and hammers. And my filthiest reliever from yesterday was Jhoan Duran with this fastball and curveball overlay. Here's a 100-mile-an-hour fastball and an 87-mile-an-hour curveball. Good luck hitting that combo. And now, my pitching ninja moment of zen. Fernando Tatis made this catch, and after making that sick grab, he was serenaded by the bleacher bums. with a "he's on steroids" chant. I love his reaction.
Making the catch, doing a dance. Keeping warm. They're all over him in the blink. Oh, yeah.
What is up, everybody? My picks of the day today are a three-leg parlay. I'm going to start out with a player performance double of Kodai Senga to have 5 Ks or more and the Mets to win. Then I'm going to take Logan Gilbert for 6 Ks or more and top it off with Zach Gallen for 7 Ks or more. What would your picks of the day be?